Coming up on The World Today. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson admits to attending party at number 10 and offers heartfelt apology. Tennis great Novak Djokovic admits there were mistakes on his immigration forms and to meeting a journalist despite testing positive for COVID. Plus, US President Joe Biden calls for a historic change to Senate rules as he seeks to overhaul the country's election laws. A warm welcome to our viewers here in Nigeria and around the world. Thanks for joining us on the program today. I'm Teniola Shoboale in Lagos, Nigeria. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson did not see nor receive the email inviting staff to socially distanced drinks on May the 20th, 2020. That's according to his press secretary, nor did he tell him to send it. However, Prime Minister Boris's then fiancée, now wife, Kerry Simones, attended the event, and Downing Street is not commenting on whether he noticed food and drinks there or if he brought a bottle to it himself. But the Prime Minister this afternoon apologised for attending the drinks party, which was organised to thank staff members. In his apology to MPs, he said that with hindsight, he should have sent everyone back inside and should have found some other way to thank them and should have recognised that even if it could be said technically to fall within the guidance, there would be millions and millions of people who simply would not see it that way.
I know that millions of people across this country have made extraordinary sacrifices over the last 18 months. I know the anguish that they have been through, unable to mourn their relatives, unable to live their lives as they want or to do the things they love. And I know the rage they feel with me and with the government I lead when they think that in Downing Street itself the rules are not being properly followed by the people who make the rules. And though I cannot anticipate the conclusions of the current inquiry, I have learned enough to know that there were things we simply did not get right. And I must take responsibility. Number 10 is a big department with the garden as an extension of the office, which has been in constant use because of the role of fresh air in stopping the virus. And when I went into that garden just after 6 on the 20th of May, 2020, to thank groups of staff before going back into my office 25 minutes later to continue working, I believed implicitly that this was a work event. But, Mr. Speaker, with hindsight, I should have sent everyone back inside. I should have found some other way to thank them, and I should have recognised that even if it could be said technically to fall within the guidance, there would be millions and millions of people who simply would not see it that way, people who suffered terribly, people who were forbidden from meeting loved ones at all, inside or outside, and to them and to this House, I offer my heartfelt apologies. And all I ask is that Sue Gray be allowed to complete her inquiry into that day and several others so that the full facts can be established.
Following the Prime Minister's apology to MPs, opposition leader Keir Starmer asked him if he would do the decent thing and resign. Anger has grown since local media had reported that Mr. Johnson and his partner, Kerry, mingled with about 40 staff in the Downing Street garden after his principal private secretary, Martin Reynolds, sent an email invitation asking attendees to bring their own alcohol. Numerous people, including some lawmakers, have described how the rules kept them from the bedsides of dying loved ones last May, in contrast to the events in Downing Street. Starmer also brought up the case of a woman whose father died of COVID-19 in 2020. An advisor to Prime Minister Johnson quit her role in December after a video surfaced of her laughing and joking about a party in Downing Street during a Christmas COVID-19 lockdown in 2020.
Well, there we have it. After months of deceit and deception, the pathetic spectacle of a man who's run out of road. His defence that he didn't realise he was at a party. It is so ridiculous that it's actually offensive to the British public. He's finally been forced to admit what everyone knew, that when the whole country was locked down, he was hosting boozy parties in Downing Street. Yes. Is he now going to do the decent thing and resign?
I regret very much that we did not do things differently that evening, Mr. Speaker, as I've said, and I take responsibility and I apologise, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, when the Prime Minister's former Health Secretary broke the rules, he resigned. Yes. And the Prime Minister said he was right to do so. When the Prime Minister's spokesperson laughed about the rules being broken, she resigned. And the Prime Minister accepted that resignation. Why does the Prime Minister still think that the rules don't apply to him?
Well, our London correspondent, Juliana Olayinka, the closest person we have to number 10 at this time, joins us now. Juliana, apart from the reaction by opposition leader calling for Mr. Johnson to resign, what other impression has the Prime Minister's apology made on MPs today?
Well, as you can see, it was a pretty testy set of Prime Minister's questions, anger on both sides. But as you said, it's not just the opposition Labour Party leader and several senior officials within the Labour Party. We have just heard from the Scottish Conservative leader, Douglas Ross. He has called for the Prime Minister's resignation. I believe he is the most senior Tory member to ask for the Prime Minister to quit. And it is going to be a very serious couple of days for the Prime Minister. If you take your mind back to just before Christmas, the Prime Minister had to rely on the opposition Labour Party to get through the Plan B legislation because about 90 of his own backbenchers rebelled. Now, for a vote of no confidence to be triggered by the very influential Backbench 1922 committee, an open letter needs to be written to them by about 54 Conservative MPs, and there are certainly, if not publicly, but behind closed doors, Conservative members that are willing to do so. We heard the apology that you've just been playing there. For some people, not good enough. The Prime Minister has admitted that when the entire country was in lockdown under very strict regulations, he spent 25 minutes at a party in the garden of number 10, where we know that booze was being drunk and definitely social distancing measures were not being adhered to.
But, you know, the Prime Minister still enjoys a lot of popularity, but there are many Britons upset they could not be with their loved ones during the lockdown, yet this party held. Is it safe to say Mr. Johnson gets to keep his job right now based on public ratings?
Well, of course, we all know that Prime Minister Boris Johnson is a very populist leader, not the first of its kind. We've seen many of them prop up, not just in America, but across Europe. But unfortunately, that's not going to be enough for him. The latest polls suggest that over 66% of the UK public want him out of number 10. That was taken just after PMQs. There was a poll taken last night. Again, 2/3 of those who participated said that the Prime Minister should resign. Again, Tenny, I think it's really important. Let's just cast our minds back to the 20th of May, 2020. Britain was under lockdown. Essential shops, as well as pubs, bars, restaurants, were all closed. You could legally not see more than one other person from your household outdoors. The guidance was to work from home. On that particular day, over 300 people lost their lives to COVID. The death toll was at about 34,000. 9,000 people were hospitalized. Over 1,000 people were on ventilations. The Prime Minister himself had just survived COVID. This is not about populism. This is really getting into the hearts, the minds and the souls of the British public, who are quite frankly really ticked off. If you're living in the UK, the media is completely awash with stories of loved ones, including loved ones of members that are sitting in the House of Commons, talking about how they couldn't see their dying mothers, they couldn't see their dying children, mothers that were outside hospitals on FaceTime because they couldn't go in, having to watch their poor son or daughter dying. At that time, Whitehall were inviting 100 members of staff to a party where they were told to bring their own alcohol. And the Prime Minister has today, at the dispatch box, admitted that he was there. I'm not sure, Tenny, that the populism is going to cut through with the public this time, but we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, Juliana, a lot to wait and see. I mean, but what happens now to investigations led by Sue Gray into the events of that day? When can we expect any results from that?
Sue Gray. So Sue Gray is a very senior civil leader. She is going to be leading the inquiry. Again, got to take us back to some of the other data that the former gentleman, I believe Simon somebody, he was in charge of leading this inquiry. He himself had to step down because we found out that he himself was hosting a Christmas party in his office when you were not supposed to. So already the inquiry is dogged with scandal. But according to some sources, who runs the country? Sue Gray runs the country. She is a very, very respected, well-experienced senior civil servant. She has dealt with inquiries, not potentially of this nature, but certainly very serious in the past. A lot of people are asking the Prime Minister to be very, very afraid. According to some reports, she is quite chummy with some senior Labour MPs. So it is going to be difficult. During Prime Minister's questions today, the Prime Minister was batting off questions by saying, let's see what the final determination is going to be by Sue Gray's inquiry, which means the Prime Minister's, tenure, his premiership is in her hands. But that's if he's not forced out by some pretty angry Conservative members before we get to the end of that inquiry.
All right then, Juliana, thank you so much for the update.
Thank you.
And now to another man under fire. The last we heard from him, world tennis #1, Novak Djokovic, said he was looking forward to playing in front of fans in the Australian Open next week. His participation still hangs in a balance as Australia immigration is yet to decide whether or not to recancel his visa over controversy regarding his travel form. Things could get even more complicated now as Djokovic himself has admitted there were mistakes on his immigration forms and to meeting a journalist despite testing positive for COVID-19. The journalist says he had been told not to ask Djokovic about his vaccination status in the forthcoming competition. Djokovic said he had gone ahead with the interview because he had not wanted to let the journalist down. Djokovic, who is unvaccinated, had his visa revoked on January the 6th, shortly after arriving in Australia amid questions over the vaccine exemption that would have permitted him to enter the country. A judge had on Monday dramatically overturned the decision and ordered his release from detention. Well, some Australian residents say they were unimpressed by Djokovic's recent statement, attributing a mistake on his document for entry to Australia to human error.
Well, I don't like his arrogance. I feel he's come across as he's above it all. But it does feel like we've stuffed up on our side. And so it's a bit of a mess. But I've seen his statements, and it does seem that he's been telling a few fibs too. So I think he should just probably go back.
I think we should give him the chance to correct that human error or mistake, whoever he has committed. But I think it's good for every one of us to see him playing on the court, right? And definitely I'm desperately waiting for him to just come onto the court and play in front of Australian people and entertain us. That's it.
I really respect the thing that he did that, but I don't think, like, still, because allowing him in would still put the bad example, because COVID is a risky situation, right? And then even if he did the 14-day isolation, he could still be positive and then infect people and stuff like that. But yeah, because of the inequality thing, I don't think my view won't change. Yeah.
Still to come on the programme. Britain's Prince Andrew fails to get civil case of sexual assault dismissed by a US judge. More details in a moment. France's Institute Pasteur is predicting coronavirus cases in the country will peak in mid-January, followed by a peak in hospitalizations later this month. It comes days after the World Health Organization warned that half the continent will get the Omicron variant of the coronavirus. In the meantime, Saudi Arabia today registered its highest daily number of new COVID-19 infections so far, with about 5,000 cases. Here's more on the situation across the world on our COVID-19 Global Update.
Germany has reported 80,413 new coronavirus infections, the highest recorded in a single day since the pandemic began, as the contagious Omicron variant rips through a population with lower vaccination rates than some other parts of Europe. The previous daily record on November 26 was more than 76,000. French Health Minister Olivier Véran says it's too early to say if the current Omicron-fueled wave of the new coronavirus had peaked in the country, which is currently reporting record numbers of daily new cases. The French health authorities on Tuesday reported 368,149 new coronavirus cases, the highest single-day tally of the pandemic, and the seventh-day moving average of new cases, which smooths out reporting irregularities, rose to a record level of 283,394. Officials in Russia say the country has so far recorded 698 cases of the Omicron coronavirus variant and will prepare new measures by the end of the week to combat its spread. Omicron has pushed COVID-19 cases to record highs in parts of Western Europe and the US, but the variant has been slower to hit Russia, where daily cases have fallen from a peak of 41,335 registered in early November. Morocco says it's considering wage rises for health workers and tax incentives to attract foreign investors and doctors to plug shortages in the health system as it battles the pandemic and expands medical insurance. The health ministry says hospitals have an acute shortage of 32,000 doctors and 65,000 nurses. The Chinese city of Tianjin has started a new round of testing of its 14 million residents. China, which has stuck to what is effectively a zero-COVID policy, is scrambling to prevent the spread of the highly infectious Omicron variant ahead of the Lunar New Year holiday later this month, as Beijing prepares to stage the Winter Olympics from February the 4th. Indonesia today kicked off its COVID-19 booster program for the general public, as the world's fourth most populous nation hit an almost 3-month high in cases amidst the rise of the Omicron variant. The virus has infected more than 4 million Indonesians. And finally, Canada's second most populous province is planning to force adults refusing to get vaccinated to pay a significant amount, not less than 100 Canadian dollars. Quebec has been one of the worst hit Canadian provinces for COVID-19 infections, regularly recording the highest daily count of coronavirus cases of all provinces.
At least 8 people have been killed in a bomb blast in the Somali capital, Mogadishu. Islamist militant group Al-Shabaab has claimed responsibility for the attack, which took place on a road by the entrance to a camp for the Somali Air Force close to the international airport. Eyewitnesses say a private security convoy escorting foreigners was passing by when the bomb exploded. One of them said the blast was so huge that it destroyed most of the buildings near the road and vehicles passing by the area. Another said he saw dead bodies and injured people strewn across the road. U.S. President Joe Biden's called for a historic change to overhaul the country's election laws. In an impassioned speech, he said he supported changes that would allow his voting reforms to be passed without the support of opposition Republicans. Misgivings from 2 senators in his party are hampering his plans, and no Republicans have backed them. Currently, a majority of 60% is needed to pass most legislation in the Senate.
The United States Senate. Hear me plainly. The battle for the soul of America is not over. We must stand strong and stand together to make sure January 6th marks not the end of democracy, but the beginning of a renaissance of our democracy. You know, for the right to vote and to have that vote counted is democracy's threshold liberty. Without it, nothing is possible. But with it, anything is possible. Filibuster is not used by Republicans to bring the Senate together, but to pull it further apart. Filibusters have been weaponized and abused. Today, I'm making it clear, to protect our democracy, I support changing the Senate rules, whichever way they need to be changed to prevent a minority of senators from blocking action on voting rights. When it comes to protecting majority rule in America, the majority should rule in the United States Senate. Arrested in jail.
At least 15 people have been killed in landslides and flooding caused by torrential rains in southeastern Brazil. The victims died between Sunday and Tuesday in Minas Gerais state, where rivers have overflowed, leaving towns partially submerged. More than 28,000 people have been forced to flee their homes. Authorities are currently monitoring dams that could burst, as more downpours could affect the hardest hit areas. The UK's Prince Andrew failed to persuade a US judge to dismiss Virginia Giuffre's lawsuit accusing the Duke of York of sexually abusing her when she was underage and being trafficked by the late financier Jeffrey Epstein. In a decision made public today, U.S. District Judge Lewis Kaplan in Manhattan said Giuffre, 38 now, was entitled to pursue claims that Andrew battered her and intentionally caused her emotional distress. The judge said it was premature to consider Andrew's efforts to cast doubt on those claims, though the 61-year-old prince could do so at trial. While the claims have not been proven and the prince is not accused of criminal wrongdoing, his ties to Epstein have damaged his reputation and cost him many royal duties. And that's the program today. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Teniola Shoboale.